If this story hit you somewhere real, drop a like, subscribe, and pass it along to someone who needs to hear it. The moment she smiled at me across that restaurant table, I already knew the first call had been made. She thought my silence was surrender. She was wrong about almost everything. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 45 years old. And for the past decade, I've built a career doing work that most people cannot explain at a dinner party. Compliance consulting. I help corporations stay inside the lines, clean paperwork, airtight merger filings, regulatory frameworks that hold up under scrutiny. Nobody writes magazine profiles about compliance consultants. Nobody asks us for autographs. We live in the margins of other people's ambitions, and that's always suited me just fine. The background is a very comfortable place when you know exactly what's happening in the foreground. My wife, Celeste, had never quite figured out what I did for a living. She understood that I worked with legal documents and corporate structures. Beyond that, the details slid off her like rain off glass. As long as the mortgage cleared on time and her Porsche Cayenne had a full tank, she had no complaints. She worked as vice president of strategic partnerships at Meridian FinTech, a fast-growing Denver startup that was, at the time, on the verge of something very large. She was good at what she did, genuinely good. She walked into rooms the way a match strikes, sudden, bright, impossible to ignore. We'd been together for 11 years. I met her 2 years after her first marriage collapsed. She had 2 kids from that relationship, Avery, who was 6 when I stepped in, and Miles, who had just turned 2. Their biological father resettled in Oregon and treated child support like a suggestion. I became the one who showed up. I coached Miles's Little League team through 2 losing seasons without complaint. I sat at the kitchen table with Avery while she wrestled through algebra, sketching out diagrams until something clicked. I taught both of them to ride bikes in the park 3 blocks from our house, jogging alongside them until they didn't need me to anymore. I thought that counted for something. Then came the dinner at Carlisle's on a Tuesday evening in mid-September. Celeste ordered the halibut. I got the strip steak. We were deep into a bottle of Chardonnay when she put her fork down, folded her hands on the table, and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Not anxiety, not regret, something that looked disturbingly close to excitement. "Daniel," she said, "I need to tell you something." I set down my glass and waited. "An opportunity has come up." She said it the way someone announces a promotion. "I've been thinking about it for a while." She paused, and in that pause I watched her decide she was going to say the next sentence regardless of how it landed. "You know my CEO, Harrison Cole." I nodded. I'd shaken the man's hand twice at company events. Tall, silver at the temples, the kind of executive who seemed to have been assembled from parts specifically selected to project authority. He spoke in polished, quotable half-sentences and had a handshake engineered to leave an impression. "He's interested in me," Celeste continued, "and I'm interested in him. It's purely physical, Daniel. Just one night. He's been something I've thought about for years, and he's made it clear he feels the same way." She leaned forward slightly, as though proximity might soften what she was saying. "It's just one night with my CEO. I'm not asking for anything drastic. I just need to get it out of my system." The noise of the restaurant receded. I sat very still, waiting for the part where she laughed, where the mask slipped, where any version of reality I recognized reasserted itself. It didn't come. I picked up my fork, set it back down. When I spoke, my voice was level. "Okay," I said. She blinked. "Okay, yes, okay." That wasn't the response she'd prepared for. She wanted argument, eruption, something large enough to make her feel justified in whatever she'd already decided. I gave her one word and nothing else. We finished dinner in near silence. She kept glancing at me across the table, trying to read something in my face that I wasn't putting there. I ate my steak methodically. I ordered coffee. I paid the check. In the car, she tried again. "You're really okay with this?" "You've made your decision," I said, eyes on the road. "What else is there?" She didn't know that I'd already sent 2 texts from the restaurant parking lot. The first went to a corporate investigator named Raymond, a former SEC analyst I kept on retainer for professional matters. The second went to my offshore account manager. Celeste read my stillness as resignation. It was preparation. I was up at 5:30 the next morning, the same as always. Celeste was still asleep. I showered, dressed, gray suit, blue tie, everything identical to every other morning, because the most important thing was that nothing appeared to change. By 6:15, I was in my home office with the door closed. Raymond had already sent 3 emails overnight. He moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who understood that information has a shelf life. The first email contained the preliminary corporate filings for Meridian Fintech and their pending merger with Hargrove Capital Group. The deal was valued at roughly $400 million and had been building for 8 months. Celeste had mentioned it over dinner a few times, proud of her role in shepherding the negotiations. I hadn't said much. I had listened carefully. The second email was where things became interesting. Raymond had pulled the board composition for both companies and mapped it against their disclosure frameworks. Buried inside the compliance section, the section that was, professionally speaking, my native language, was a clear requirement. Any personal relationship between executive leadership during an active merger negotiation had to be reported to the board within 10 business days. Harrison Cole had not reported anything. Celeste had not reported anything. That was the first crack in the foundation. The third email contained something Raymond had added on his own initiative, a background sweep on Harrison Cole, married 26 years, 3 adult children, 2 country club memberships, a seat on the board of a local charitable foundation, a man whose entire public profile was built on the twin pillars of family stability and ethical leadership, a man who had cultivated exactly the kind of reputation that makes a fall spectacular. I printed everything, locked it in the filing cabinet in my office, and deleted the emails. By 7 o'clock, I was in the kitchen drinking coffee when Avery came downstairs with her backpack already on. "Morning, Dad," she said, pulling a granola bar from the pantry. "Morning. Ready for that chem test?" She made a face that answered the question without words. "You're still getting me after practice?" "Wouldn't miss it." She smiled, hugged me quickly, and was out the door. Miles appeared a few minutes later, hair going in 4 directions, deeply suspicious of consciousness before 8 a.m. "Why is morning a thing?" he muttered, pouring cereal. "One of the great unsolved problems," I replied, and ruffled his hair. Celeste came down at 7:30 in her power suit and heels, moving through the kitchen with practiced efficiency, filling her travel mug without quite making eye contact. "Early meeting," she announced. "Have a good day," I said. She paused at the door. "Daniel, about last night, you said what needed to be said." I kept my voice easy. No need to circle back. Something moved across her face. Relief, mostly. She nodded, grabbed her keys, and left. I watched her car back out of the driveway. Then I called a corporate attorney I'd worked with on 3 prior cases. We had an appointment scheduled for the next morning. Celeste believed she was navigating this situation. She was about to discover she was standing in the middle of it. 3 days later, everything broke open. I was at my downtown office reviewing compliance documents for a pharmaceutical client when my phone lit up with a text from Avery. "Dad, Mom is losing it. She's been crying for like an hour. What's going on?" I checked the time, 9:40 in the morning. Celeste should have been at her desk. Before I could type back, my phone rang. Her name on the screen. I let it ring 4 times. "Warren," she said, and then caught herself. "Daniel." Her voice was fractured. "I need you to come home, right now, please." "What happened?" "Just come home, please." I told her I'd be there in 20 minutes, then gathered my things at a pace that suited me. Whatever had happened had already happened. There was no urgency in arriving faster. When I walked through the front door, Celeste was on the living room sofa with her phone pressed between both palms like she was trying to keep it from escaping. Her mascara had tracked down her face. Her eyes were swollen. She looked up when she heard me, and the desperation in her expression was almost enough to move something inside me. Almost. "What's wrong?" I asked, setting my bag down. "Harrison called me this morning." Her voice shook on every syllable. "He was screaming. Daniel, he was absolutely screaming. I sat down across from her, waited. The merger is dead. Fresh tears broke through. The Hargrove deal, it's completely gone. The board called an emergency session last night. They found out about us, about Harrison and me. She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth. He kept screaming one question over and over. Who is your husband? Who the hell is your husband? And then he hung up. I've called him back 15 times. He won't answer. I leaned back in the chair. Why would he ask that? I don't know. Her voice cracked toward something close to hysteria. I don't know, Daniel. I don't know. Hargrove's board pulled out this morning. They're citing undisclosed conflicts of interest and breach of fiduciary duty. She held up her phone with trembling hands. HR called me an hour ago. They want me in tomorrow morning. They used the words administrative leave. I nodded slowly, as though processing information I was hearing for the first time. My contact at Hargrove Capital had confirmed the board vote the previous evening. The anonymous tip about Cole and Celeste's relationship had originated from an untraceable address. The compliance violation had been documented and delivered through channels that left no fingerprints I hadn't chosen to leave. How did they find out? Celeste asked, her eyes searching mine. I held her gaze steadily. That's an excellent question. The HR meeting went precisely as I anticipated. Celeste came home that afternoon looking compressed, like the air had been slowly removed from her. She stood in the doorway of my office. Administrative leave, she said, pending an internal investigation into undisclosed conflicts of interest during active merger negotiations. She paused. They took my badge, my laptop, my phone, made me hand everything over like I'd stolen something. Standard procedure, I said, without looking up from my screen. Standard procedure. Her voice sharpened. My career is disintegrating and that's what you have for me? Standard procedure? I closed the laptop and gave her my full attention. What would you like me to do? Show something? Anything? Act like you have some stake in what's happening to me. You made a choice, I said. What's happening now is the shape that choice takes in the real world. She stared at me. The look on her face was one I recognized. The specific expression of someone encountering a version of a person they thought they knew and finding a stranger instead. You knew this would happen, she said quietly. I suspected it might. How? How could you possibly have known? I stood, walked to the filing cabinet, and withdrew a folder. Inside, copies of the merger documents, the board disclosure requirements, the specific compliance language that Celeste and Harrison Cole had both failed to meet. I'd been holding them for days. Because I read the documents, I said, the ones you should have read before you decided to pursue your CEO in the middle of a $400 million merger negotiation. The color left her face completely. You reported us. I didn't report anything, I said. And that was technically true. I ensured that relevant information reached the people whose job it was to act on it. There's a meaningful difference. You destroyed my career deliberately. Her voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper. No, you violated your company's ethics policy during a sensitive period and created an undisclosed conflict of interest. That destroyed your career. I simply made sure it was documented. I returned the folder to the cabinet. You wanted one night with Harrison Cole. I gave you my permission. I never said there would be no consequences. She reached behind herself for the doorframe, steadying. Who are you? The man you've been married to for 11 years, I said. The one you never quite bothered to understand. From the top of the stairs came the sound of footsteps. Avery appeared, backpack over one shoulder, her face tight with worry. Dad? Mom? What's happening? Why don't you ask your mother? I said quietly. Ask her why she's not going to work anymore. Ask her about her fantasy. Celeste's face cycled through white, then crimson. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned and walked quickly toward the bedroom. The door shut hard enough to rattle the framed photos in the hallway. Avery looked at me, eyes filling. Dad, what is going on? I climbed the stairs slowly and put my arm around her shoulders. Your mom and I are going through something difficult. But I need you to know, you and Miles are going to be okay. I'm making sure of that. Are you getting divorced? I didn't answer immediately. The truth was that I'd already spoken to a divorce attorney. The paperwork was being structured. But Avery didn't need that information tonight. Let's take it one day at a time, I said. Right now, I need you to be strong. Can you do that? She nodded against my shoulder, and I held her there for a long moment, feeling the full weight of everything I'd put into motion. This was the part no one tells you about when you choose consequences. You don't get to choose them only for the person who deserves them. Raymond called me 2 days after Celeste's suspension. I was at my desk when his name appeared on screen. There's something you need to see, he said. Meet me at Dunmore's in an hour. Dunmore's was a quiet bar in the financial district, the kind of place where the lighting is deliberately inadequate and conversations stay at the table. I arrived to find Raymond already in a corner booth with a thick manila envelope in front of him. You asked me to go deeper on Harrison Cole, he said, sliding the envelope across. I went deeper. I opened it carefully. Photographs, hotel receipts, a lot of hotel receipts, bank statements showing payments to a name I didn't recognize. Raymond kept his voice low as he walked me through it. Cole hadn't started with Celeste. He hadn't ended with her either. Over the past 6 years, there had been at least 3 other employees. Every situation had been contained quietly. Settlements, silence, the institutional mechanisms that protect men at a certain level of seniority. Does Hargrove's board know about the pattern? I asked. They received an anonymous communication this morning, Raymond said, with the faint suggestion of a smile. I looked up at him. You didn't need to do that. Call it professional integrity. Men like Cole don't deserve soft landings. He leaned back. There's more. His wife filed for divorce yesterday. Her attorney is going after everything: the house, the retirement accounts, a vacation property in Aspen. She's not negotiating, she's dismantling. Good for her, I thought. And your wife, Raymond continued, has attempted to reach Cole 67 times over the past 3 days. He's blocked her number. His attorney sent her a cease and desist this morning. Of course he had. Celeste had become a liability the moment everything collapsed. Cole had cut her off with the clean efficiency of a man who had done this before. What about her position at Meridian? Raymond's expression darkened slightly. The board is meeting next week. Termination is essentially a formality at this point. They're building grounds for dismissal without severance. The undisclosed relationship during active negotiations is a clear breach of her employment contract. I closed the envelope and placed it in my bag. Send your invoice. Already sent. He studied me for a moment. Daniel, I've known you 15 years. I've never seen you operate this way. You're usually the mediator, the one looking for middle ground. She asked me to accept her infidelity, I said. To smile and pretend it was nothing. I chose a different response. Raymond nodded slowly. What's next? Divorce attorney. Full custody of Avery and Miles. You think you'll get it? She violated professional ethics, lost her income through misconduct, and had an affair with her married employer, I said. I'm the stable parent. I'm the one who's been raising her children for 11 years. Yes, I'll get it. We shook hands and I left, driving home with the envelope in my bag and a clarity that felt almost like calm. Avery was sitting on the front porch steps when I pulled into the driveway, her arms wrapped around her knees. Can we talk? She asked. I sat down beside her on the step. The evening was cool, the street quiet. Mom hasn't come out of her room in 2 days, Avery said. Miles keeps asking me what's wrong and I don't know what to tell him. I'm 17, not a parent. Tell him the truth, I said. His mom made some serious mistakes and now she's living with what comes after them. Avery was quiet for a moment. Did she cheat on you? I'd promised myself, no more lies, not with her. Yes, I said. She nodded. The tears came slowly, the way they do when someone has already been crying for days and there isn't much left. I heard you fighting. I heard her say his name. Harrison Cole. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. How could she do that to you? After everything you've done for us. People make choices, I said carefully. Sometimes those choices cause damage that spreads further than they imagined. I'm furious at her, Avery said. Mi pareja am I replied. And I was. Not in the hot, reactive way, in the cold, measured way that had been informing every decision I'd made for the past week and a half. We sat together on the step until the street lights came on. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday afternoon via process server. I hadn't called ahead. Celeste answered the door and found a man with a clipboard. I watched from my office window as she signed, her hands unsteady. She stood on the porch for a long moment, looking at the envelope as though she could delay what was inside it by not opening it. She found me in my office. Divorce papers. Her voice had been scraped raw by days of crying. "You're actually going through with this?" "Yes." No conversation, no attempt to work through this together, nothing. I finally looked at her directly. "You worked through something with Harrison Cole. I'm finishing what you started. Daniel, please." Her voice fractured. "I made a terrible mistake. I know that. But we can get through it. Counseling, time, we can." "Read page 7, I said. She opened the envelope with shaking hands, turned the pages. When she reached the custody arrangement, she went very still. "Full custody," she said it slowly, like a phrase in a foreign language. "You're asking for full custody of Avery and Miles." "Yes, you can't do that. They're my children." "They're your children from your previous marriage," I said. "I've been their father for 11 years. I attended every game, every recital, every parent-teacher conference. I'm the stable parent, the employed parent, the one without an ethics violation on record. The court will weigh those facts." "For her?" "This is punishment," she said. "You're taking my kids as punishment." "I'm protecting them," I replied. "You destabilized this family. You lost your income through your own choices. You had an affair with a married man who turned out to have a documented history of predatory behavior with employees. Do you genuinely believe a judge will find you the more suitable option?" She caught herself on the doorframe. "I never thought you were capable of this. You never really thought about me at all," I said. "That was always the problem." From upstairs came the sound of footsteps, and then Avery appeared on the landing, backpack over one shoulder. She had clearly heard most of it. "Dad's right, Mom," she said quietly. Celeste turned, hope flashing briefly across her face. "Avery, sweetheart." "I understand what happened," Avery said. Her voice was controlled, measured, more like mine than I expected. "You cheated on him. You lost your job because of it, and now you're losing everything else." She paused. "You made those choices. You don't get to be surprised by where they lead." The words landed like a door closing. Celeste's face came apart. "Avery, please, I'm your mother. Don't take sides. You stopped being the person I thought my mother was when you decided your fantasy was more important than this family." Avery came down the stairs past her without slowing. "Dad, I'm ready. Practice starts in 20. I stood, grabbed my keys. We walked out together. Behind us, I heard Miles emerge from his room, his voice small and confused. "Mom, what's wrong?" I paused at the threshold. Miles was 13, old enough to feel the weight of this, young enough to not understand its shape. "Miles," I called, "come with us." He looked between me and his crying mother, making a calculation in real time, and then he grabbed his jacket and followed us out the door. In the rearview mirror as we pulled away, I saw Celeste standing in the doorway, watching the three of us go. Alone in the frame of the house she'd had every reason to keep. Celeste's instinct after the divorce papers was to build a coalition. She called her parents, her sister, the few friends she'd kept through the years of prioritizing her career over those relationships. One by one, the calls went poorly. Her father, Gerald, contacted me 2 days later. He asked to meet at a diner near his house. He looked older than I remembered, like the past few weeks had added something to his face that sleep wasn't going to remove. "I lost $42,000 in that Meridian merger," he said, without preamble. "Retirement stock, gone." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "Are you?" He studied me carefully. "Celeste says you're the one who torpedoed the deal. I ensured that a compliance violation was reported to the appropriate parties," I said. What happened after that was the result of the violation, not the report. Gerald leaned back in his seat and exhaled slowly. She told me what she said to you at that restaurant, what she asked. He paused. She said you agreed. I gave her permission, I said. I didn't say the consequences wouldn't follow. A long silence stretched across the table between us. I can't defend what she did, Gerald said finally. My wife wants me to because she's our daughter, but I can't do it. He rubbed his face. Those kids, Avery and Miles, you've been more of a real father to them than their biological father ever attempted to be. They should be with you. He stood and left money on the table for his coffee. But Warren, he caught himself. Daniel, you could have just divorced her. You didn't have to take everything. I met his eyes. She needed to understand that her choices had real dimensions, not a quiet exit, real consequences. He paused at the door. The man I knew before wouldn't have been this calculated. The man you knew before didn't have his wife ask permission to have an affair, I said. He left without answering. I finished my coffee. 3 days after that, Celeste showed up at Avery's soccer game. I saw her by the fence, trying to catch Avery's eye during warm-ups. Avery saw her and deliberately redirected her attention to the field, the way someone turns away from a bright light. After the game, in the parking lot, Celeste approached us. Avery, can we please just talk for a few minutes? Avery loaded her gear bag into my truck without responding. Avery, I'm still your mother. You stopped acting like it when you decided one night was worth more than all of us. Avery climbed into the passenger seat. Dad, can we go? I started the engine. Celeste stood in the parking lot as we pulled out, watching us leave. She'd become exactly what I'd described to Raymond, present but invisible. Speaking but no longer heard. The final custody hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning in early November. I arrived with my attorney, a sharp and meticulous woman named Rebecca, who had a reputation for winning complex custody cases in situations where the financial and ethical circumstances were entangled. Celeste arrived with a court-appointed attorney. Private representation was no longer in her budget. The judge, Patricia Holloway, reviewed the case file for several minutes before beginning. This is a custody proceeding for Avery Mercer, age 17, and Miles Mercer, age 13, Judge Holloway said, both children from the respondent's prior marriage. The petitioner, Daniel Mercer, seeks primary custody. Rebecca stood. Your Honor, Mr. Mercer has served as the primary caregiver for these children for 11 consecutive years. He has maintained stable employment, consistent housing, and an active presence in every significant dimension of their lives. The respondent, by contrast, was terminated from her position due to ethical violations committed during a period of active professional responsibility and engaged in a documented extramarital relationship during the marriage. Celeste's attorney started to object. Judge Holloway raised one hand. I've reviewed the written testimony submitted by Avery Mercer, the judge continued. At 17, her stated preference carries substantial weight under state statute. She has expressed a clear and unambiguous desire to remain with Mr. Mercer. She paused, glancing briefly at Celeste's attorney. The therapist's report for Miles Mercer indicates that he experiences significantly greater security in Mr. Mercer's household. That is documented and consistent. I sat with my hands folded, watching the room arrange itself around a conclusion I'd spent weeks building toward. Primary custody of both children is granted to Daniel Mercer, Judge Holloway said. The respondent is granted supervised visitation on alternating weekends, subject to review at the 6-month mark. The gavel came down. Celeste folded into her chair, her shoulders shaking. Her attorney placed a hand on her back. I stood, shook Rebecca's hand, and walked out of the courtroom. Avery and Miles were in the hallway with my sister. Avery looked up when she saw me. Well, you're staying with me, I said. She moved forward and wrapped her arms around me. And Miles came in from the side, and for a moment we stood there in the courthouse hallway with Celeste's grief audible through the closed door behind us. I felt neither triumph nor guilt. What I felt was the particular stillness that comes when something that has been out of alignment for a long time finally settles back into place. Harrison Cole's unraveling was public and complete. 3 weeks after the custody hearing, the story broke across the local business press. Cole's wife's divorce attorney had released documentation to a financial reporter, evidence of a sustained pattern of affairs with employees, company funds used to settle at least one harassment claim, and internal communications that painted a picture of systematic abuse of his position. Meridian's board voted for immediate termination without severance. Hargrove Capital filed a civil suit against him personally for breach of contract. His country club revoked his membership. 2 charitable foundations removed him from their boards. 3 years of carefully curated reputation collapsed inside a news cycle. Celeste had wanted one night with her fantasy. The man who had been her fantasy was now a cautionary story that would follow his name on every search result for the foreseeable future. I was reading the coverage at my desk when Avery appeared in the doorway. "Dad, Mom's outside." I looked out the window. Celeste was parked at the curb in a small Honda sedan I'd never seen before. The Cayenne had been repossessed months ago. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair was pulled back without ceremony, and the clothes she was wearing were simple and inexpensive. The armor was gone. "Tell her I'll be out in 5 minutes, I said. Avery hesitated. "She looks rough, Dad. Like really rough." I closed the laptop and went outside. Up close, it was worse than the window had suggested. There were new lines around her eyes and something behind them that I hadn't seen before. Not grief exactly, but the aftermath of it. The place grief leaves when it's been sitting in someone for a long time. "Thank you for coming out," she said. "What do you need, Celeste?" "I found a job," she said. "Administrative assistant at a small firm in Colorado Springs. It's not what I was, but it's something to build from." She paused. "I'm moving there, starting over." "Good," I said. "I wanted to ask about the kids." Her voice went careful. "The supervised visits, I know that's what the order says, but I was hoping that once I'm settled, if both of them were willing, we could maybe find something more flexible." "That's a conversation for you to have with them directly," I said. "If they want to see you, I won't create obstacles, but I won't manufacture willingness that isn't there." Her face moved through something complicated. "Avery won't return my calls. Miles blocked my number. Can you blame them?" "No," she said quietly. "I really can't." She looked at me then, the way she hadn't in years, with the performance entirely gone. "I'm sorry, Daniel, for what I asked, for what I did, for not understanding what I had until I'd made it impossible to keep." She pressed her lips together. "I exchanged something real for something that was never real at all." "Yes," I agreed. "Do you think they'll ever forgive me?" "Maybe," I said, "but that's entirely between you and them. You spent a long time making deposits into their trust, and then you made one withdrawal, mi pareja, large. It cleared the account. Rebuilding that is going to take time and consistent effort, and I can't do it for you." She nodded, wiping at the corner of one eye. "You were a better father to them than I was a mother. I think I knew that for a long time and resented it instead of learning from it." I didn't respond to that. She got back into the car, and I stood on the driveway and watched until it turned the corner at the end of the street. Avery appeared at the front door. "Is she actually going?" "Looks that way." "Good." She came out and stood beside me. "Do you think I should call her at some point?" I put my arm around her shoulders. "That's yours to decide, nobody else's. There's no right timeline." She leaned into me slightly. "Thanks, Dad." "For what?" "For not making us choose," she said. "We chose anyway, but you didn't make us." 10 months later, the house felt like a house again. Avery graduated with honors in the top 7% of her class. I sat in the stadium seating with Miles on my left and watched her cross the stage, and the feeling in my chest was one of the cleanest things I've experienced. Celeste had been invited. She sent a card instead and said she didn't want to make the day complicated. Avery read the card, set it on her desk, and didn't mention it again. Miles made the varsity baseball team as a freshman. I was in the stands at every home game, the kind of parent who cheers too loud and doesn't care. We'd fallen into rhythms that felt structural, movie nights on Fridays, Sunday breakfasts where nobody was in a hurry, homework at the kitchen table with the radio on low, simple repetitions that accumulate into something that holds. I'd also started seeing someone. Her name was Nora, a landscape architect I'd met at one of Miles's school events. She was thoughtful and unhurried and genuinely curious about the world in a way that made conversations feel like somewhere I wanted to be. The opposite of what I'd had in all the ways that mattered. Avery had noticed. "You're different with her," she said one evening, not looking up from her textbook. "Different how?" "Like you remember how to be a person," she said. "Not just a function." Miles looked up from his laptop. "You were like a very organized robot before. Now you're like a person who owns a robot. It's better." I laughed, and the laugh was real and came without effort, which was its own kind of data. One evening while I was putting dishes away, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I saw a photo from Avery's graduation. "She's beautiful. I'm mi pareja proud of her. Please tell her that for me." I recognized Celeste's new number. I'd blocked the old one at Avery's request. I brought the phone to Avery. She read the message without speaking for a moment, her expression working through something I didn't try to name. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. She took a slow breath. "Tell her thank you. Tell her maybe we can talk at some point, but not yet. I'm not there." I sent it. 3 dots appeared and then disappeared and then reappeared. Then, "Thank you. I'll be here when she's ready." Avery handed my phone back. "I'm not ready to forgive her." She paused. "But I don't want her to not exist either. I just need more time." "You have as much time as you need," I said. Late that night, after both kids were in bed, I sat on the back porch with a cold drink and the kind of quiet that doesn't require filling. The sky was clear enough to see actual stars, which doesn't happen often enough. 11 months ago, my wife asked me for permission to betray our marriage. I said okay. Then I made sure she understood in specific and irreversible terms what okay actually meant. Some people, if they knew the whole of it, would call what I did ruthless, cold, a calculated campaign rather than an emotional response. They might be right on the first 2 counts, but I would tell them this. I didn't go looking for consequences to impose. I went looking for the truth of what she'd chosen, and I followed it to its natural conclusion without interference. She wanted one night with her fantasy. She got it. In exchange, she lost a $400 million merger, her career, her income, primary custody of her children, and the version of her life she'd spent a decade building. I have my kids. I have my integrity. I have a career that was never dependent on the recklessness of others. I have someone beside me who treats the relationship as something worth protecting. I had said okay. What she never understood, what she might be beginning to understand somewhere in Colorado Springs, is that okay was never acceptance. It was a door I opened my pareja she could walk through it. And on the other side of that door was exactly what she'd earned. I finished my drink and went inside. Tomorrow I had a morning meeting, Miles had practice, and Avery wanted me to look at her college application essay before she submitted it. The ordinary machinery of a life that had been reconstructed from the wreckage of the one before it. Better for being rebuilt, stronger for having been broken. I turned off the porch light. I slept without difficulty,